I'm calling this Urban Renewal Board meeting to order. Jeff, will you call the roll?
Yes, Councillor Peitzold.
Here.
Councillor Smallwood.
Okay. Keep an eye out. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Hamblin.
Here.
Councillor Lee.
Here.
Councillor Exner.
I'm here.
Councillor Schultz.
Here.
Chief Schneider. Not here yet, it appears. Executive Director Jones. Also not here yet. And Mayor Pulliam.
Here. Jeff, I believe we still have a quorum for Urban Renewal Board. Is that correct?
Correct, we do.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and just jump into it. I'll do our agenda review and stuff for this evening's meeting at our City Council work session. With that, Jordan, I'm not sure who from staff is kind of providing the staff report to get us kick-started tonight.
Yeah, I think Tyler is going to do the brief staff report, reporting out on the public outreach regarding the Growing Together mural. And thanks to Jeff and Tyler for putting together that staff report that kind of did the overview of the public comments and what they heard, what the commission heard at their listening sessions. So with that, Tyler, go ahead and take it away.
All right. I will also extend a thank you to Jeff for covering one of those listening sessions while I was out of town. You may recall that there were 2 listening sessions in August to gain additional public comment regarding the proposed Growing Together mural. On July 6th, the Urban Renewal Board approved $11,000 in urban renewal funds to be spent on that mural. And there was some feedback and chatter on Facebook that prompted the board to seek additional public comment before we moved forward. And so just to summarize some of that public comment, the 2 listening sessions were held August 6th and August 12th. There were 16 comments total during those listening sessions, 2 comments in favor, 14 comments in opposition. Between May 21st and August 21st, about a 3-month period, we received 50 emails regarding that mural. 10 emails were in favor and 40 emails were in opposition. There was also a very large Facebook comment thread that was submitted for the record. There were 140 comments in opposition from 113 unique individuals and 10 comments in favor from 10 individuals. The staff report goes into detail on what the specific opposition was related to the 113 individuals that commented. And if the board would like, I can go into further detail on the specifics of the opposition. But I think generally speaking, the consensus from those opposition comments on Facebook were that the project was either too expensive or the funds would have been better spent on other community needs. Ultimately, we've kind of compiled all the information, thank you, Jeff, and proposed 3 different sort of scenarios for the board to consider. The first would be continuing to move forward with the $11,000 contribution that was originally approved earlier this year. The second would be withdraw the $11,000 of support for the mural project. And then the third option, given that there's not currently a master plan for the Arts Commission, and that is something that we'd like to work on and get that project started, the third option would be suspending the authorization of the $11,000 pending the creation of the Arts Master Plan and moving forward at that point. I'm sure there's some questions from the board, so I will open it up to you for any specific questions you have or discussion regarding the various options that were presented.
All right, thank you. This has been a fun one. Open for discussions. Councillor Exner.
Clarification on number 3 alternative. If we're going to do the master plan, are we proposing that we would fund the master plan from urban renewal dollars or some other fund to make the arts master plan work? Is that what that is part of that alternative?
So I'm not recommending the use of urban renewal funds at this point. I think that the Arts Master Plan, we could probably pull from some other communities of similar size that have Arts Master Plans. I've seen a few, briefly in some research that I've done. So we could probably put something together at least as a starting point, and then go from there. There may be some, additional funds needed to actually finalize that, but there's some money set aside that we could either use from non-departmental, or we could find a couple $1,000s to get some advice or some contractors on board to help
Yeah.
facilitate that process if needed.
I don't know if a couple $1,000s would do more than just get us to open the books up and start looking at things. I agree that some of that stuff could be done with other communities and such, but I know that the Art Commission has put that on their priority as a big thing to do, is to move forward on the art master plan. And they have done a few preliminary things to make it happen, but obviously there's staff involvement, there's monies to be able to put together for a contractor, make sure that all the parts and pieces are put together. So it would be, in my mind, that alternative 3 would have some substantial commitment from the Urban Renewal Board.
I think, just to clarify, the art master plan would be all inclusive of the city as a whole, so we wouldn't be able to use exclusively urban renewal dollars for that, given that there may be, areas of the city identified that aren't within the urban renewal district. So just keep that in mind as well.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, I strongly favor number 3, because I think we need to have an overall plan instead of hopping out project by project. I think that would be great, and especially if we could add a couple more Sandy people to the commission. I really appreciate the work everyone's done, but it's hard to get something accomplished without a plan.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Counselor. I tend to I'm leaning a little bit their direction that you are, as well as Counselor Exner. It does feel like, well, first of all, I think this has been a great effort. The property owner and his willingness to contribute his building, as well as, all the volunteer hours and everything that our Arts Commission does with a variety of their projects, not just this. Was something really to get excited about. But as we've gotten a lot of community feedback and kind of started to uncover a lot of things, there are some things that have made me a little bit nervous, which has been referenced here tonight. One of which is, proceeding with something without a master plan, for arts, and really understanding how it can holistically be part of an overall vision, art vision for the community and the city, and how it fits with that. It bothers me. It does feel like we're trying to run a little bit, or walk before we can even crawl, or whatever the saying is that I'm trying to think of off of the top of my head. But it does feel that way. And I also, though, I do want to keep this alive, as it could fit into a future project within the master plan. But I do think that, as we talked more about it, and a little bit of more research being done, the fact that we don't even have a code for an art mural, or any kind of ordinance, that takes us through an approval process or denial for one that's been put together by members of our community. There's just a lot of work left to be done, I feel like, before we start jumping into some of these projects. So those are some of my thoughts that I'm having tonight as well. So thank you for sharing those, Councilors Exner and Lee. Councilor Exner.
Yeah, one of the things that I guess I wanted to bring up too is that in the process, when Ms. Holly put together this original startup to try to find out if there were donations and such, she got 27 donations just in a short period of time, almost $8,000 worth of real money donations as well. And if the project would go forward without city money, it'd really be basically just a sign code thing at this point, because you're right that we don't have a mural code of any kind. And so it doesn't really need to be put through all this whole summary of stuff, or this whole review of stuff that we've been going through this last couple of months. So there's that side of things. I do want to make sure I put out there that I'm really in favor of this mural. This mural, I think, has a lot of benefit to it. The premise was to get the community together, and I really feel like we have had some people that have taken it apart without really knowing all of the things that are involved in there. And there are some things that those negative comments that I read through this last week or two is some of them are misunderstood, just plain not right. Some of them have some good points to them, and I think it wouldn't hurt to be able to incorporate some of those constructive thoughts. But I got to tell you, some of those comments, I'm not sure where they came from, other than some misunderstandings. I won't go any more negative than that, but I do think in terms of a mural, this has got a lot of quality to it, a thought out process. And I'm really thankful for Brad Picking, who's the owner of the building, who's put this forward, wants to make it move forward, and is willing to do some work there. I appreciate that too. So I just want to make sure that was in the record.
Great points. You know, there is a lot of support. We spent a lot of time talking about, you know, the non-support. There's a tremendous amount of support, and with folks in this community that are willing to put kind of their money where their mouth is, right, and contribute towards their project, which says a whole lot. If they want to move forward, absolutely. I think it'd be great. Councilor Schultz.
Yeah, I still really like this project. I like the mural. Art is subjective, so I had some of the same feelings when I was reading through those comments as Councilor Exner, and just not sure where some of that is coming from. But I'm still in support of this mural. I don't know if we need to take it in a different direction. I could be convinced to go with option 3 if that's where everyone else is leading. I just kind of want to, I guess, put it out there that, you know, we have someone that's so passionate and has done so much great work for our community, and then we gave her the go ahead and now we're pulling back, and I don't love that. But I don't know at this point what the best option is, and like I said, I could be persuaded, but I still like the mural, and I feel like it's kind of, maybe some people are sort of missing it's not the only building in town, it's not the only art project that could be done. So in my mind, doing this mural doesn't take away from other things that people are passionate about, or other art that people would like to see, or anything like that. So this was very specific. This building owner wants this mural. So in my mind, it doesn't super make, I'm not making the connection between why this mural can't happen so that other things can happen. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Councilor. Very appreciated. Councilor Peetzold.
Yeah, you know, this through the process, we went through this already, and you know, in the public open meetings here, and we didn't get the outcry that's come after it's been approved and after it's gone forward, right? And I think there's a process, and so, you know, that we did go through, and that's the fair process that was there. Unfortunately, some people may not have been aware of it, with, you know, and that's sometimes what happens out there. Also, I was curious on how many of those comments were people that don't even live in our city, because there seems to be a lot of opinions as well from those that do live outside of our city that, you know, aren't, you know, they may call Sandy home, or, you know, or maybe even from totally different communities, not even, you know, within 20 miles of our city, with opinions there. So also, the way I read it, a lot of these comments have been becoming quite personal towards a person, and not towards the actual project of that, or finding ways to bring that out, which is sad in my opinion, that it has gotten to that level on it, and not about the actual project itself. The other thing is the misunderstanding, I think Carl brought up there, about where monies can actually go, because some of the things that they said, go do this with the money. Well, it can't, you know, it's not legal to do that with urban renewal money on that aspect of things. So, and some are in that. Again, like Bethany had said, you know, and others, you know, there is some good things that have come out of that. So, you know, I spoke about some of the frustrations I had, negative ones that, about the tax on this project. But then there's also some of the stuff that was brought up that was, I wish it had come up back in April, right? That was brought forward, and it should have been during that process, you know, because there's been a lot investments by our community and others in the idea that this was going to be done. You know, the one with the master plan, I totally agree. I think we should have that master plan. You know, what is that look? That, you know, what is that idea through that master plan process? And, you know, this is a I don't want to say grassroots, but a new agency, committee, or whatever, that's finding its ways and its legs to get going. Art is subjective, and thank goodness I'm not the one deciding one way or the other. We might have a bunch of stick figures. You know, I'm not that person, and I think I've heard that from a few other people too. You know what? You know, one person to another, and so I have my own opinions on a lot of art there that, you know, I don't share because it's not necessarily my idea of it is not necessarily the correct way, right? It's all subjective for each of us and how we look at it. But I could be persuaded, like a few of you had said before on number 3 there, because I think there is a value to that master plan, and I think there would be coming out of it may have the exact same product, but maybe that would be a wise place to go down as well. So anyways, love to hear from a few others.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate it. Further discussion. Otherwise, I am hearing people starting to go towards number 3.
I'll add one.
I also hear reluctance from others as well. So I'm not trying to. Tyler, did you have a comment before I go to Counselor Smallwood?
I was just going to say, I'll add one, you know, comment, which is through that arts master plan process, we can also help identify with public outreach what type of art people want to see. You know, is it more of the early settlers and sort of the same sort of historic murals that we have? Is it something more modern? Is it something, you know, with more indigenous, you know, aspects and cultural aspects that isn't presented currently within our community? So we could also, you know, get a lot of good information and valuable information through that master plan process to help determine what type of art our community needs and wants going forward as well.
Thank you. Counselor Smallwood.
Well, I guess I like a master plan, obviously. I mean, a master plan is always, you know, a great place to find direction, where you've been, where you're going. My issue with it in this application at this point in this process is that, like many of you have already said, art is very subjective. I don't think any of us on the screen right now would be able to agree on a piece of art. And I definitely have a little bit of a burr about the way that this process has been done, that we all agreed on it, moved it forward, and you have some people in the community, and I'm not trying to negate their comments or how they feel about it, but a lot of this was started by a single individual with the statement and things that were put on Facebook and social media outlets, whether they were accurate or not. It's been very attacking toward a particular individual. And I'm with Carl, I still like this project. And again, we all agreed on moving this project forward. So to me now going backwards, I really don't like that idea with this. Now I'm not saying that we shouldn't still go forward with the master plan, but I still would like to go forward with this project. I really would. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that, Counselor. So what do we want to do, you guys? Counselor Lee.
Just to get things rolling along, I would offer a motion to go with choice 3 and see if there are the votes for it.
There's a motion on the floor. I see a hand up with Counselor Exner.
I'd like to clarify, if I could. I'm very concerned that, as you know, I'm in favor of the mural itself, but if we do go to the number 3 alternative, and I like that as well, that I think we should be committed to doing the job relatively correctly. So if we don't throw some of our backing behind alternative 3, I feel like we are just kind of letting it, basically saying number 1 is the one, because we're just going to do nothing, because there's no commitment either by monetary or by commitment of staff. So if we do choose 3, I would like to at least qualify that alternative comes with support either through staff or through some sort of financing to make sure that we have ability to move forward on some of the parts that's going to cost us money.
I agree with you, Carl.
I don't have a
That's
problem.
the option that's determined. I can absolutely reach out to some of the communities that I know have master plans and get a ballpark estimate on what the cost was to develop that and kind of get a timeline put together on moving forward with that project and bring that back to council or the board.
Okay. So is that a second? Or Councilor Lee, do you want to revise your motion?
Sure. I will move that we should move forward with an art master plan and that the city should support the development of that plan with the necessary resources.
Sorry. And with that, we're saying that alternative 3, we're withdrawing the 11 grand. Is that right?
Correct.
The way it's worded now was suspend, not withdraw. So just want to be clear on what language we're using in the motion.
So that means that the 11 grand would be held in abeyance, or whatever the term you want to use, until a master plan is completed, or until we can find another way to go forward. So what does that mean? I guess that's all I'm asking.
I think the intent or the spirit of that third option is to, suspend any funds allocated to that project until the master plan identifies what art is needed and where it's needed. It may or may not be the back of that building that's currently presented. It may be, I don't know what the master plan will tell us, right? But it may be that a mural is needed there, but perhaps some specific items need to be changed on the as proposed, but not withdrawing the funds completely. No.
And realizing that if they do decide to go forward with private funds, so if they get enough money to be able to move forward, it becomes a sign code issue.
Correct.
If they decide to pull all the funds out of that.
It'd be a private mural on a private building, and we can discuss the language of the of Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code in depth at another time if we need to. In short, there's not a lot of restrictions on private murals at this point in time.
So I still have a motion on the floor. I still do not have a second, but excuse me, that's fine. Councilor Smallwood, you're still in the queue despite logging off and then back on. You're still next.
And you're still muted.
now. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. I have standing up, by the way, and I'm having massive issues tonight.
Uh-oh.
Everyone in the world, metro region, is having issues.
Oh no. Oh no.
She frozen?
Yeah, I think so.
That north side of town, huh?
Yeah. Was there further discussion while we wait for Councilor Smallwood?
Does John have anything to say? I know he's hard to pipe in a little bit being on his phone and all, but I'd be curious to hear what John take.
I'm raising my hand physically, but not with the little hand raise feature.
We can hear you.
Me? I was just in the middle of a nap there. I apologize. No, I'm kidding. It's interesting the points that were just made. I'll second Jan on that motion, the second motion. But I guess the points that I think is interesting is that if a private business owner wanted to put this mural on the side of their building and had private funding, the only thing that's getting in the way right now for that to happen is the Arts Commission.
Right.
So it's kind of the Arts
Not
Commission
even
didn't
that.
exist. This person could actually have this artwork and have to go through sign code issues. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. For me at least, I know the original comments on Facebook were kind of, if we've got money, we should put it towards the pool. And $11,000 isn't going to buy chemicals for the pool for very long, let alone water and staffing and all that. So I think there's some feelings held over from the pool closure. We're also coming up into election time as well too. So I think there's a lot of things being said, whether people actually feel that way or don't feel that way, or if it's just something to comment on. I even think too that regardless of what the mural is, there are going to be people that complain about it. And I was just driving by the one in the back of Ace Hardware, and I can guarantee you somebody will complain about that mural. And I thought it looked amazing. I actually got a closer look, and I hadn't been that close in a little while. So, you know, I'm in support of it happening. I get there's a need for a process, though. And I think the feedback that we got just going through this, I'll call it secondary process, because they did go through an initial process. It seems like folks like to speak up after it's past the point. And so I think that's kind of what we're consistent with around here. So needless to say, I'm in support of it continuing on, but I'll second Jan's motion for option 3 with the changes that she made after Carl spoke.
Thank you, Counselor. Good words there. Counselor Smallwood, you're back up. Let's give this a shot. She's not moving.
She's froze.
She is froze.
Tell her to move to Garibaldi. You have internet out here with no power.
Oh, shoot. All right. She usually comes right back on after she comes off. So we'll give her a second, and then let's all be quiet and let her like jump right into it.
I'm at City Hall if she needs to come use our internet for a few minutes.
I am aware, by the way, that some of the folks are maybe not in the city so much, but just around the outside have called in to me and said that they can't connect very well because their internet is down, because the wire is down, that kind of stuff. So,
Well, isn't your pole down, Jeremy, the main pole for the county?
The poll?
The pole, P-O-L-E. I heard from the Conservation District, they have no internet because one of the county's main poles for the internet burned down.
Well, they probably about have 10,000 poles, but one of them burnt down.
Okay, enough. Okay. Okay, Counselor Smallwood, you're up. Go, Counselor Smallwood. Unmute. All right, jump right in.
I don't even know anymore.
She can also dial in too. There's a phone number on there to dial in.
We're gonna have to move ahead. Shoot,
Yes,
I have
30.
I have a motion and I have a second on the floor. I will look for discussion with no discussion, we will go to a vote. Is there any discussion? All right, so let's go ahead and go to a vote. All those in favor signify by giving us a aye or a thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, nay or thumb down? Okay, motion carries. With apologies to Counselor Smallwood, as I know we all wanted to get her input. With that, I am now going to close our Urban Renewal Board meeting.
Thank you.
And with that, I will now convene our City Council work session here at 6:30. 6:31. Let's go ahead and start off with a quick review of tonight's agenda. Per usual, I will pause for any questions for staff or to provide us with any kind of commentary going in if you feel we need it. First up with our consent agenda tonight, we have our City Council meetings from our last meeting, as well as an amendment to our IGA for Highway 26 pedestrian project. Were there any questions on either of those two items before we talk tonight? Okay. Under resolutions, we have the Highway 211 jurisdictional transfer agreement. I know there will be opinions there, but is there any questions or anything during our work session before we get there tonight? Okay, seeing none. New business IGA agreement for a transportation system plan kickoff update. Okay, and then we'll go into our city manager report, our committee and council reports, and then don't forget we have a city council executive session afterwards this evening. With that, let's go ahead and kick off our wastewater system improvement and discharge alternatives update. Jordan, do you want to get us started with that?
Sure. I'll make some introductions. We have our consultants from Murray Smith with us tonight to give a presentation on our discharge alternatives analysis and where they're at with the project and some of the work up to date, and give you an update too on some of the findings, the preliminary findings on the alternative discharges, which involves looking at wetland opportunities, which I think council will be excited to hear about. We have Matt Hickey, Ken V. Hill, and Jason Flowers that will be, I think, tag teaming most of the presentation. I think I might chime in here and there. But we also extended an invite to our watershed councils from Clackamas and Sandy. So we're happy to see some folks in attendance tonight to listen to this presentation. The slides are available on the council's agenda packet website. And so there's a lot of good information there that they're going to be talking through. And then also just a chance for some questions and answers about the project and where we're at. There's so many different components to this system facilities project with the existing wastewater treatment plant, the new MBR treatment plant, the discharge, the green alternatives analysis. And so Murray Smith has been spearheading that work and all those different components. And that's separate from the collection system side of things, which we've been doing some actions recently with the different contracting methods, and we're moving forward with that as well. So I think I'm handing off Matt or Jason to kick off the presentation. Again, we're happy to have this opportunity to kind of give an update on where we're at.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Great. Jason's got the presentation up.
See it?
Okay, good. Everybody sees it? All right. Thank you, Jordan. My name is Matt Hickey with Murray Smith, and I do have with me tonight presenting Ken V. Hill and Jason Flowers, technical experts on the project. And dive right in here. So just the agenda for the presentation, we'll talk about the purpose of the presentation, some of the background, how we got to where we are with the project. Talk about some of the findings to date and the overall status of the project and some of the next steps we'll be working on. Next slide. So purpose and background, go ahead, next slide. So just, like I said, update the council on the findings from some of our studies relative to the siting of the outfall on the Sandy River and some other elements of that, and also update regarding the status of the key project elements. We'll run through those as well. So some of the key issues, some of the background of how we got to needing this project is there's high inflow and infiltration in the city's sanitary sewer collection system that causes issues at the plant with capacity. The existing wastewater treatment plant has limited capacity and it's located on a constrained site. So you can't just add treatment at that site. There's not enough room to add more to the plant. That's why we're looking at a satellite MBR plant. There's limited discharge capacity at Tickle Creek. It's a very small creek. They can only discharge, city can only discharge about 6 months of the year, and the rest of the time it goes to irrigation in the summertime months. And now with DEQ, there's a mutual agreement order, MAO, from DEQ to make improvements to the system and make sure they're not, there's no more impacts to reduce impacts to Tickle Creek. Next slide. Just an overview of the elements of the system we're talking about. At the center of the city of Sandy. And then to the west of that is the existing wastewater treatment plant that discharges to Tickle Creek, just downstream of the plant. And then also during the summer months, I mentioned, they irrigate at the container nursery northwest of the plant. So the project we're working on now is looking at discharge alternatives to the Sandy River, just north and west of the city in that general area. Next slide. So the overall approach that was developed during the wastewater system facility plan involved a work on the collection system and then reducing the I&I in the system, also construction of a diversion pump station that would divert about half the flow from the collection system to the new satellite MBR plant. And from the satellite MBR plant, discharge to the Sandy River provides the city a year-round discharge. As the city grows, there's a place to discharge the flows. And then with the current work we're doing, there's been some opportunities looking at the former Rosin Lake site to help offset some of the discharges to the Sandy River during the summer in particular. Next slide. So we'll talk about the findings to date on the study work that we've done. Next slide. So the treatment facilities, they've done work on existing plant and also satellite membrane plant. I'll have Jason talk about that.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you. My name is Jason Flowers. I'm the lead wastewater technologist for Murray Smith, and my area of expertise and what I've been working on the projects is focused on your treatment facilities in terms of updating your existing treatment facility as well as working to advance the development and the basic design for the east side satellite treatment facility, the facility plan. So in terms of the existing facility plan, we've been doing a lot of work working with the contract operators that are there at the site and working with the city to identify numerous upgrades that need to be done to kind of bring the existing wastewater treatment plant up to better performance so it can meet the existing permit compliance. I could go through each one of these if you want to, but I imagine it's probably a lot of detail and a lot of things you don't need to, and we can definitely answer those questions if you have them. Definitely walk through these, but we've identified numerous upgrades that we're able to do. We've actually already submitted a preliminary design report to DEQ, which they've already given us comments back now. We're just revising it. We'll get it out this week likely to send back to DEQ, and that would be kind of the first step in terms of getting the existing plant up into better condition to be able to meet discharge permit requirements that are needed for the current discharge location. So that part of the work is moving along. And then in addition to that, we've also been focusing on the east side satellite treatment facility that was proposed in the facility plan there as well. This would be, the plan is still to have this be done in 2 stages, where we first do an initial phase where we have a peak design capacity about 3.5 MGD. And then later on, as capacity demands increase, as population increases, we'll then expand it up to 7 MGD is a plan. This facility will be an MBR facility. I believe the council had toured an MBR facility last year. Obviously not this year, considering everything's going on. But yeah, so it would be an MBR facility, which is one of the top of the line facilities in terms of technologies at this point. And it'll be located within the site proposed in the facility plan as well too. Now, in terms of the high quality, in terms of the effluent, this will be also reclaimed or recycled use quality water, which is considered high quality effluent, and will be able to be used for irrigation uses or whatever additional use may be needed as well. But it will produce a solid effluent and much better performance for the discharge that we intend to have in the Sandy River. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Matt unless anyone has questions, and we'll talk about the Sandy River outfall siting study.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I do actually want to confirm that the effluent coming out of the MBR plant is the quality. I understand it's not drinkable water, but are people going to be able to be in contact with it? If it is intended to be in the old Rosin Lake, there'll be people with boats, maybe fishing up alongside it. Somebody's going to be wading through it. So what's the quality of the output at this point in your analysis?
Yeah, it's going to be Class A reclaimed water. So it'll be, quality water that can be contacted with.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the question, Carl. Thanks, Jason. So the next part of the study we're working on is looking at pipeline alignments and the outfall locations for the siting study. Next slide. So we looked at a number of options for pipeline route and the siting. For one of the options, what we're calling it the Oxbow option, the big bend in the Sandy River. And there we go. So we have a pipeline route down to that, which is option 1A. And the pipeline route from there to the opportunities to discharge at Rosin Lake are 2A. So that's one of the options we're looking at. And then the next group option, or another next siting opportunity, is at the Tenai Road at the Revenue Bridge. Looks to be a favorable location for discharge. So we looked at a couple pipe routes to that point from the plant. That's option 1C and 1B. 1B runs along the highway and on Tenai Road, and 1C crosses through the city park, the state fisheries land, through the hatchery, and then some farm fields, and then on Tenai Road. Might be there's advantage of that, avoiding work in the roadways and so forth. And then there's options, a couple options running from the Revenue Bridge to the opportunities to discharge Rosin Lake site. Option 2C and 2B. B is along Tenai Road, and then option 2C is along Bacon Creek Lane, and then across some fields. We're also showing the possible irrigation option. I'll talk more about that. It's a opportunity we found during the irrigation study, that there might be a property that could take some irrigation, but it can only take a portion of the flows. So it's not the, and it requires additional pipes, and it's not along the route of pipe to the river or to Rosin Lake. So it's doesn't look like a highly viable option in that regard. We also looked at an option to discharge from Rosin Lake back to the Sandy River if that was needed. And we'll talk more about that. Next slide. Now with that, I'll hand it over to Ken.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Ken Vigil, and I'm a senior civil and environmental engineer. And once the effluent is treated, I've been working hard to try to find a place that we could put the effluent. And we talked about different locations on the Sandy River, and we've done some studies looking kind of at river science. We've done some coordination with agencies, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Service, Corps of Engineers, DEQ, to get input from each of the agencies on these various sites. Quickly, I'm just going to talk about these, and we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail. The site that's the furthest downstream, we call the PGE site because it's on an old power line site where we could get an easement on that. And then we're also looking, like we said, at the Oxbow site, which has been talked about earlier. And then we're looking at a newer site that just emerged recently, kind of where Tenai Road crosses over Revenue Bridge. And again, these alternatives have advantages and disadvantages, and I'll talk to them a little bit more. Next slide, please. So again, this Oxbow site was an early site to look at, and you know, some of the advantages, it was maybe the closest site to go to. It turns out because of the steep topography, and we would end up tunneling underneath the river, it's an expensive site as well. This site was found, in terms of the river science, it was found to not be the most stable site. So if you look at the aerial photograph, you can see the gravel bar, and you can see those two different, you know, portions of the river as it goes. So we've looked at this site over history and find that the river moves back and forth across that quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And that lack of stability becomes a problem for us to place a pipeline that we could keep covered with water. You can imagine you could put a pipeline in there and the river would shift and then it wouldn't be covered with water. This site was also not favored by the agencies because it's close to the intake to the fish hatchery on Cedar Creek. It's also an area that has better fish habitat for rearing and spawning. So this site is kind of falling out of favor in some ways. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is one we call again, the PGE outfall location. It's more connected with using Roslyn Lake. And if we needed to find a place to discharge from Roslyn Lake for land application, it would go to this site. This site has some of the same challenges. You can see the big gravel bar there. and the water moves from one side to the other side depending on the season. So it'd be a hard place to put an outfall and have it stay and be functional all the time. That gravel can also clog the outfall. It can damage the outfall as the river bed is moving from season to season. It's also a site that has better fishery habitat, so it wasn't as favored by the agency staff. Next slide, please. So this is the site that we've been looking at most recently, and it's again at Revenue Bridge. The advantages here is this is an area of bedrock, and the river's not moving much, and so we could actually put an outfall in here, and the river is stable enough the outfall wouldn't be necessarily damaged or the water wouldn't be moving away. The water is deeper here. There's a nice good current there, so it'd be better mixing in terms of water quality. When we checked in with the agencies about this site, they all like this site the best because, again, from a fisheries point of view, there's not really spawning or rearing habitat. This is a migration corridor, so the fish would move up through here quickly. And the fact that it's upstream of the Cedar Creek Fish Hatchery was also favorable from the agency point of view. So this site is looking to be the most favorable at this point. Next slide. So there's a lot of information here, and Matt and I are going to talk about it. Really, this is probably a better topic for another meeting, but this is essentially trying to summarize the advantages and disadvantages of the various alternatives I just explained. And Matt, maybe make a few comments.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the main takeaway here is we've looked at several options. We developed some criteria with the city to weigh, to compare those options. And the criteria on the left side of the table, and we looked at the pros and cons, and the pros are in the green, highlighting the green with the plus. And so we just wanted to look at our various options, look at a little more quantitative approach to assessing those. And go to the next slide, please. And it looks like the, based on that analysis, the option 1C and 2C, which is a combination of basically taking the pipeline from the plant to the Revenue Bridge and then from Revenue Bridge to Roslyn Lake. So that combination of those two appears to be the most favorable at this point. So this is just a summary of that slide. It's about $13.5 million for that, very preliminary numbers. Also on this slide, we looked at alternative discharges to the Sandy River. One is going to the Clackamas County wastewater treatment plant, and one going all the way to the Gresham plant. You can see the costs for those are quite high. We did want to just have a baseline and a comparison of those and make sure we can, basically check those off as not viable relative to the options we're looking at.
So what's option 6?
That is, that's at the possible irrigation at Kelso Road. It's just a piece of the solution. We looked at, I'll talk a little more about that, but we looked at irrigation opportunities along the pipeline route to the Sandy, and then from Sandy to Roslyn Lake, and there were just some limited opportunities. We couldn't find a big land owner that was going to take all the flow or most of the flow. But we did find one opportunity along Kelso Road as a property that, could be a container nursery similar to the other one that city's irrigating at, and they could use some of that flow. But it's only based on the area of that land, it can only take about 25% of the flow. So basically it'd have to be a pipe built all the way to that point, and then it'd only take 25% of the flow. We still have to build pipe over to the Sandy and to Roslyn Lake to do the discharge. So that's just another option we looked at.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yes.
And I had a question about the Clackamas County, the west one. Is that all the way down into Clackamas area? Is that the cost to go all the way down the Clackamas River to their location, or is there another location that West owns?
Their system, they're doing a bunch of work on their system, but even with their upgrades, they're just going to have enough flow to cover or enough capacity to cover their flows in the future. So basically it's extending pipe similar to Gresham, you basically have to extend a pipe all the way to their plant.
All the way down in Clack, way down by almost 205.
Yeah, exactly. And that may involve some pump stations as well, because you have some, the ground, the topography is up and down, and
yeah,
maybe some challenges with that. So it's quite expensive, but basically wanted to make sure we compared those, make sure if anybody had the question, hey, why don't you send this to Gresham or Wes, we can say, well, it's significantly more expensive. So option we're looking at seems to be more cost effective. Okay. Next slide, please.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Carl.
Okay, I'm going to be positive and upbeat here. For me, two things. One is, I'm assuming you haven't done any public request for public input yet, which might make a big difference. We've come across a couple of different things that when we got through all the analysis and things look pretty good, and then the public input really changed our mind. So I'm assuming you're ready to start doing that process soon?
Yes, I'll talk to the city about reaching out to the public on various elements. I don't know if Jordan has anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, the public outreach on this particular discharge alternative that we're, presenting tonight and the possibility there, some of it is sort of the chicken and egg. You need to do the feasibility studies of whether these things are actually feasible and possible before you get to the point of then vetting it with the public
Right.
on these different options. So we've talked about this before, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Roslyn Lake in particular. It's, making sure we don't get the cart ahead of the horse too far. So we don't get too excited about one alternative, start moving in one direction, and then find out that, engineering wise doesn't make sense, or it's cost prohibitive or something like that. So there is sort of a level of analysis that needs to happen. And this, work was, produced essentially by public input from the watershed councils, from the city council, from doing things like tours, and then from the city council and the mayor going to the state and getting funding to look at some green alternatives and recycling opportunities. So, this is sort of an update and a presentation on what our findings so far on, the results of that public input and those state dollars to look at this. So the next phase would be, if we're heading in the right direction and we want to explore the feasibility of the wetland opportunity, then we have some more engineering studies that need to be done, believe it or not, more of the technical stuff of, okay, what actually happens to the water? How big do these things need to be? What size diameter of pipes and all that. And then eventually the council will need to incorporate a discharge alternative into your facilities plan. That was part of the whole effort to adopt the facilities plan, was knowing that we would later have to have the council amend it. And so as part of that process, we would want to get public input on that discharge alternative that would then be added to the facilities plan.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that I realize, and maybe you should as well, that Revenue Bridge is a very popular spot for all kinds of public things, other than some of the conversations you've already had with some of the agencies about the fisheries and the stability of the water channel in that area. There's a lot of public use of that spot, and you might get quite a bit of pushback from some folks who, when they realize that we're thinking about Revenue Bridge as a place to outflow, you might hear some pretty strong comments about that one. So I guess that would be something to kick around. The other comment I have is question I have is, are you going to do more conversation about Roslyn Lake? Because to me, that's one of those things that has captured the inspiration of a lot of our community. And it is certainly one of those things that folks are kind of looking forward to hearing what kind of analysis that's been bringing forward. And I just haven't heard much. A lot of the conversation has been how to get from here to the Sandy River.
Yeah.
That's
Ken
a
will
good
talk
intro.
in detail about that.
Okay.
Lead us right into the perfect.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Great.
Good timing. Yeah. On the public outreach, that's a good point, Carl, about Revenue Bridge, and yeah, I've been to the site and can definitely see the other uses of that area and the homes and things like that. So it's definitely yeah, on the radar, and also the pipe routes to that site too. There's property owners and things like that need to be contacted and so forth. Once the things start coming together, look a little more, hammer things out a little bit more, we can get to that next phase.
Okay, thanks.
So there are some opportunities for Carl was talking about is the wetland creation, likely at the Roslyn Lake, former Roslyn Lake site, and then also there's some irrigation opportunities possibly along the pipeline route to Roslyn Lake. So that'll head it to Ken.
Next slide, please. Okay, so again, we're going to segue into discussion about the Roslyn Lake site, but I think this is important here to understand that in order to have a new discharge to any receiving stream in Oregon, you need to go through a water quality review, and it's called anti-degradation analysis. We've done a preliminary one of that, and what this graph is showing is really the temperature at a few different sites that we have located. We have a new site that's up near Ten Eyck Road, and then we go all the way down to where we had that PGE power line site that we showed. We have one at Roslyn, excuse me, at the Oxbow site as well. And so what we found in doing our water quality analysis is that for temperature and dissolved oxygen, we would be okay to discharge with the current flows from the community and not exceed the anti-degradation thresholds. But as the community grows, we would start to exceed those thresholds. And that's where we need to start looking for land application ideas. And that's what drew us furthermore to look at the Roslyn Lake site. Again, it still provides the city with more flexibility if you can get a permitted discharge to the Sandy River and not just have it all to Roslyn Lake. The other thing is, because of the climate, discharging to the land at Roslyn Lake during the wintertime is not feasible. We wouldn't be able to do that in a cost-effective way. So again, the preliminary results say the anti-degradation would not occur, degradation would not occur for temperature and dissolved oxygen to start with, but as the community grows, then there would be an opportunity to exceed those thresholds. So with that in mind, we're looking more at Roslyn Lake and what Carl was focusing on. Next slide, please. This is just, again, a little reminder geographically, where Roslyn Lake is and these other sites that we've been talking about, and probably nothing more to say about that. Next slide. So we've been looking at some of the scientific aspects of the Roslyn Lake site. We have sub-consultants looking at the geology, for example, and looking at some of the river science, and looking at also permitting ability and the things that we've been doing with the agency coordination meetings. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what our geology sub-consultants found. Next slide. So again, looking at the map, there's where the old Roslyn Lake site was at, and that circle kind of is focusing in. And what the geologists are doing is essentially looking at what kind of geologic formations are underneath that site. And they are finding that it's mostly what they call terrace deposits, old deposits from the Missoula floods. And the other thing that we're finding is that that material doesn't infiltrate very well. And that could be a plus or it can be a minus. I think in our case, it's going to be an advantage. Next slide. So again, look where it says Roslyn Lake, and this is just taking it like what we would call a section view, looking at what the various layers look like. Again, those terrace deposits are there, and we're finding that they don't have much infiltration capacity. The other things that are interesting to look on here are some locations of wells that our geologists found. And for example, the well that's shown in the terrace deposit is at about 78 feet to water level. It turns out that in order to protect that groundwater and not have the water infiltrate and cause a problem in the groundwater, it's actually good that the soils don't infiltrate too quickly. In that case, we can keep the effluent in the wetlands and not have it any impacts to the groundwater. And again, these are some of the planning level studies that have been done. In order to move this idea further, we need to actually do infiltration tests. We need to go out and look at the actual wetland habitat that's there right now. Next slide, please. So these are a couple of photos and just some good points to make in terms of the Roslyn Lake opportunity. And I'm gonna hand this off to Jordan for a minute because you know, he is coordinated with Tony. We've all met with Tony, and Jordan's in the process of getting a letter of interest with Tony right now. So Jordan, you have a few things?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I kind of want to, you know, just first kind of set the stage. I think council is well aware of exploring this option and where that came from. But I mean, it's one of those innovative ideas that came from, like I said, the public outreach and the council having a conversation and looking at a map and someone bringing up the idea of, you know, what if we pump this Class A water to Roslyn Lake, and then in touring places like Fernhill, where they were doing this natural treatment of their using natural treatment methods for their wastewater and creating, you know, this extraordinary wetland with birds and frogs and fish and trails and educational opportunities. You know, that light bulb moment of like, well, here's our opportunity. We can do something like this, and let's use the state funding to see, is it within the realm of possibility? And I think at the time, I don't know about you guys, I kind of thought it was a long shot, you know. I know initially we're kind of thinking, you know, maybe someday we can have boats there and swimming, but after seeing Fernhill, I was like, well, actually, could we create this wetland that can be self-sustaining and create this asset for our greater community, not just for putting our wastewater somewhere that's more sustainable than pumping it all into the river, but you know, converting it into a habitat, enhancing the habitat that's already there, and partnering with the landowner, Tony with Trackers Earth, on, you know, an opportunity to enhance that property for habitat, for educational opportunities, and all the things, great things that they're doing down there as far as their education and camps. And so then, you know, as we got into it, it became more and more, you know, real. Sort of some of this geological studies come back. It's like, well, yeah, maybe water can happen there. You know, the pipeline routes, you know, with the comment about the different discharge pipe locations, and so it became more feasible that it could be potentially be on the route to Roslyn Lake anyways. And so we started a conversation with Tony probably about a year ago, and have done some touring of the site out there. We've had a couple meetings with him. There's definitely a mutual interest in exploring this option, which again is, you know, exciting that we're at this point, and exciting, even more exciting that we can move forward jointly on exploring more of the scientific feasibility of making something like that happen. So I, you know, personally, like I said, this started as sort of this long shot idea in my mind, but something that we thought, hey, let's use the state funding and, you know, actually like take this public comment and this idea and, you know, put some study into it, to now something that's looking more like one of the better, if not best option for us in moving forward with our wastewater treatment. So like Ken said, we've been working on a letter of mutual interest with the landowner and the manager with Trackers Earth. So we really appreciate them working with us on this. I think from a, you know, public benefit standpoint, you know, it's one thing, you know, it's a great project to make sure we have a sound working wastewater system, collection system, treatment system, but also the opportunity to do something that's sustainable, but also potentially something that creates a habitat and maybe even recreational, you know, benefit for people to, you know, look at birds and wetlands and habitat, fish and wildlife. So I'm excited about the potential and the opportunity to move forward with this. I'm sure the council is too. And, we'll continue to work with the property owner on these next steps. I think, Ken, you probably have a few more things about, sort of what the wetlands might look like and, some of the next steps on, developing this idea further.
Sure. Thanks, Jordan. Next slide, please. So this is a topographic map that we got from PGE of the site. And again, those little circles are just showing where those photos were taken that we took while we were out there touring the site. And so it starts as just an idea, and then you start planning, and now we're transitioning into more of a feasibility type of a review. Is if you're going to have wetlands on this site, you're going to construct wetlands. Okay, we found out that the soils don't infiltrate very well. That's actually beneficial for us. In order to create wetlands, you have to have that hydrology stay in place and not just infiltrate right away. So we're finding that's positive. And again, what's shown here in blue is kind of the area that it would be ponded kind of naturally, the way the site topography is today. And there are wetland species that are growing in there now. There's standing water, there's sufficient hydrology to support wetlands. So we would enhance that and maybe create 3 or more cells that would be like this, natural cells that we could deliver that effluent to. And again, the effluent is class A, reuse water. So that's the highest class that you can get. It's already been disinfected. So, contact with it is okay. And these kind of beneficial uses are perfect for it. We would probably need about 30 to 60 acres of wetlands. And those individual wetland cells would be maybe 3 to 5 feet deep. We would plant them with native vegetation in coordination with Trackers Earth. They have certain species that they would like to see, and then we have other natural species that we think would be healthy for the environment that we'd like to have there. And we talked about some educational opportunities with trails and other things that you could do. So again, we're starting to just transition into being able to be more site specific here and start to do some feasibility level of reviews. Once we have a letter of interest signed by Tony, then that'll give us the opportunity to go to the site and actually do infiltration tests. So we can start moving that soil around, and we'll replace the soil after we do the test, but we can actually get on the property and start doing things, documenting the type of vegetation, documenting the wetlands with more rigor than just kind of looking at it from a distance. So I think we're making good progress, and it's exciting. Again, that's one of the things we're really happy in making this presentation, is to show you, there's been good progress on the Roslyn Lake site. Next slide, please.
Thanks.
So I'm going to transition, and Matt's going to round out the discussion, I think, here.
Okay. As we mentioned, we did look at irrigation opportunities. Barney and Worth helped with that. We didn't find a property that could take a large quantity of flow, similar to what we're looking at the Roslyn Lake site for. But along the pipeline route to Roslyn Lake, there may be some opportunities to use some of the water for irrigation, so we're still looking at that. Part of the discharge analysis involved looking at hyperaric discharge along the Sandy River, and that basically involves discharging the water into the permeable gravels around the river. And there were some challenges with that due to, similar to what Ken said, the stability of the stream bank and the moving gravel bars and things like that. There were some challenges there. Another opportunity we're looking at with the project is hydropower generation. There's quite a bit of head from the plant down to the river, and also some remaining head in the pipe all the way to Roslyn Lake. So there might be opportunity for hydropower generation, a nice benefit of this project for the city. Next slide, please. Another portion of the work we've been looking at is involving Energy Trust of Oregon. One opportunity is at the existing plant. They're replacing the UV equipment with new UV equipment, and that has lower power demands, so they're getting a grant for that. And also replacing some of the old blowers at the plant and more energy efficient. And so good opportunities there for some additional funding for the projects. And then also Energy Trust Oregon does provide funding for studies for small scale hydropower. So once we figure out the feasibility of this. It sounds like the city will pursue that as well. Next slide, please. So Jordan asked that we provide a overall project status. And next slide. So these are the 8 main tasks we're working on for the siting study. Just run through some of these. Task 3, the Sandy wastewater treatment plant, the base design report. So that's the satellite plant Jason's working on. There's a draft memo nearly ready to go, so we'll be reviewing that. Another key task for task 5 and 7, it's the outfall siting study and indirect discharge of Rosin Lake. Those are tightly related to one another. Made good progress there. Mentioned the water recycling market assessment. We just need to finalize the memo for that. And then anti-degradation element, task 8 was what portion that Ken worked on, discussed. That was key to really determine what we need to do with the outfall siting study or the outfall and looking at Rosin Lake, because we did find that there are issues to discharging just to the Sandy River in the future, and that's when Rosin Lake came up. So that's almost, we have a draft memo on that we're reviewing currently. And the last task 9 is when we compile these technical memorandums together, an overall memo, and present that to the city and DEQ. Move ahead with preliminary designs for the project. Next slide, please. Just showing these on an overall schedule. You can see these tasks will be done here in the fall, and then the final reporting will be done early next year. Next slide, please. So some of the key next steps. As Jason mentioned, we have the technical memo done for the existing plant. DEQ has reviewed that. We'll have a follow-up meeting with them. They reviewed it. They only had one comment that we'll be addressing. And the next item is the MBR plant. Is work on the basic design, basically developing the concepts for that. And then preliminary design will fall after that. And there's also a flow management strategy that we'll be including into the overall discharge analysis to the river and to the Rosin Lake site. So the outfall siting study concepts that we're developing with the work that we just discussed is, for the next steps, it's preliminary concepts for the possible wetlands at the Rosin Lake site. We're continuing with the temperature compliance data collection. We're taking data from the river so we can work that into our studies. And we'll make contact with property owners, looking at the, we've already contacted Tony with the relative Rosin Lake, and also the pipe route, and look at properties we may be crossing, easements required, and so forth. We'll compile these draft summary reports, and as I mentioned, submit to the city and DEQ early next year. Slide. And that, we can open up to any additional questions you may have.
All right, Council, here, I'll try to get you on a bigger screen. Questions, comments? Councilor Exner, since you're so excited to talk Rosin Lake, why don't you jump into it?
Actually, I want to talk about something besides Rosin Lake. Another hot subject of mine is that I'm very incorporated into the 2 watershed councils that are represented here from our city outflows, current and future. Both of them have expressed a large amount of interest to be involved in either the or with the analysis. For example, the Sandy watershed is doing currently water temperature and turbidity on the upper portions of the Sandy from what city of Sandy is at. So don't know if that's something that would be of interest, that would be applicable. Certainly in my mind, you could incorporate that into some of the turbidity and the temperature analysis that you're talking about down in portions where the city is planning on putting some of our outflow into, and that might help you out. So I certainly would encourage you to reach out to either of the 2 or both of the 2 watersheds to make that happen. Also, they are both very excited about becoming involved as we do implementation, but I know that Murray Smith's probably not wrapped up in all the different implementation pieces of it. But they're very supportive of the projects that we're doing, as long as we end up doing it in the correct way. So really excited about seeing that interaction happen. And I know I've talked to Jordan a couple times about that already, so we'll let that one go as it is. The only other thing I would ask at this time is, why would we not be able to outflow in Roswell Lake in the wintertime? What was the rationale behind that?
I'll start with that. This is Ken. So we looked at the rainfall for one thing, and trying to do a water balance on how much water could be here coming from rainfall versus effluent. And there's so much rainfall in the wintertime and no evapotranspiration for the water to go anywhere. There's not enough infiltration for the water to go anywhere. So you would essentially, we don't have a large enough area to hold that much water to hold both rainfall and also hold effluent. So we haven't talked detailed quantities with Trackers Earth. I think their site is maybe 240 acres or something like that. And when we talked about maybe needing 30 to 60 acres, that seemed in range of reasonable. Trackers Earth, I don't think they would, because of the various things they have going on there, they wouldn't give us 200 acres or something like that. So I think it's because of the size of area that we have available and because of the climate. Those are the primary reasons that we wouldn't be able to discharge year round there.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you so much for the report. Just some of the comments that Jordan said. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it, that we're all sitting around at a public engagement deal. We start staring at a map and putting our heads together, and we come up with an idea, and then we all march down to Salem and start advocating for some money to go to a alternative study, and here we are with some positive results from that. So it just goes to show, I mean, that was council leadership, that was staff, putting together the tours and bringing forward additional ideas. That was really a group effort, and we're not anywhere near the finish line yet, but this is definitely a positive step in the right direction. And so thank you everybody for your work on this. And I know I speak for all of us that we're really excited as we continue to hear updates and information on this project. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Absolutely. One thing I would say to staff is I would love to start getting Representative Anna Williams and Senator Chuck Thompson maybe to the table on some of these things and get them some updates as we go along. I want to start preparing a pretty significant ask for the legislature in this next session. And this is exciting stuff, right? And so updates and early buy-in and hearing how, they worked hard for our community to get this money as well. And it's sure going to be exciting for them to see that work is going somewhere and hearing what the next steps that we're going to need from them, because they're just as much as part of this group effort as all of us are. So yeah, all right. With that, we got a full council meeting to get to. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Yep. All right, I'm going to close this city council work session, and we will reconvene Sandy City Council here at 7:25. So we're moving quick. Everyone go to the restroom and then get back here for a meeting. All right, thank you. All right, council, let's go ahead and get started. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jeff, you threw me off with that flag. Threw off my train of thought. That was great. Good job.
Better than a bunch of bellies. That's all you see.
No, that's true. With that, Jeff, will you please call the roll for tonight?
Councilor Peitzel.
Here.
Councilor Smallwood.
She's here. Hands
She's
up.
there. I see her. Councilor Hamblin.
Present.
Councilor Lee.
Here.
Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Schultz.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. Well, welcome everyone for our meeting tonight. As usual, per tradition, I'll go through a quick review of our agenda tonight. We will see if there's any changes to the agenda. We'll then move on to public comment. This will be the portion of tonight's agenda to offer any public comment for any issues in our community or facing City Council. I will give instructions at that time, but be prepared if you want to participate to click the raise hand button to wait to be recognized, or if you're calling via telephone to dial *9 in order to raise your hand. We will then move on to the consent agenda, which has our City Council meetings from our last meeting, as well as an amendment to our intergovernmental agreement for Highway 26 Pedestrian project in there. Under resolutions, we will be discussing the jurisdictional transfer of Highway 211. Under new business, intergovernmental agreement for our TSP, Transportation Systems Plan. We'll then go to report from the city manager and then our committee and council reports. Reminder to council that we do have an executive session at the conclusion of tonight's regular meeting. With that, is there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion. Well, you're unmuted.
Consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Schultz and a second from Councilor Hamlin to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or giving a thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, or thumbs down. Consent agenda is adopted. With that, I totally jumped over our public comment portion for tonight. I apologize for that. So we will do our public comment now at this point in the meeting. If you would like to participate, again, please click the raised hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. You'll have 3 minutes, and please remember to state your name and address for the record. Jeff, please look for public comment.
Okay, Mayor, we do have one hand raised. That's Nicole O'Neill. And so, Ms. O'Neill, you should be able to unmute yourself now, and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nicole O'Neill, and I live at 17724 Van Tassel Avenue.
Welcome.
Hi. So, unfortunately, 3 times in the past 2 years, irate community members have threatened my family. Each time, council members and the city manager have expressed support and concern for my husband, Planning and Building Director Kelly O'Neill, but no concrete action has ever been taken. City leadership has not followed up with these community members or put in place any policies or procedures to address members of the public who cross the line and threaten or harass city staff. Written and verbal expressions of support are appreciated, but they are not sufficient. Concrete action must be taken to protect all staff, especially members of the building and planning department. One incident is scary. 3 incidents is a pattern that needs to be addressed. I don't think city leadership has fully considered the implications of what happened last week. One community member threatened my husband and a developer with gun violence. Then, a neighboring community member confronted Kelly when he was out in the field. No one from the city's leadership team has followed up with these community members who threatened and confronted staff. The building department staff has to continue to go back to this location repeatedly. I will repeat that. Building department staff is being asked to return unaided repeatedly to a place where they have been threatened with guns and confronted by angry neighbors. Clearly, this is a volatile, dangerous situation. Under no circumstances should any city staff members be going out to this property alone. This needs to be taken very seriously by city leadership, and immediate steps need to be taken to better protect staff both now and the next time these kinds of threats and confrontations happen. Sandy is one of the fastest growing cities in Oregon. And as we are all aware, our community is experiencing growing pains. Tension between developers and current property owners is the highest it has been in the 10 years I have lived in Sandy. I think everyone hoped that tensions would ease after the Bailey Meadows decision. Sadly, that was not the case. And political rhetoric about corruption and property rights is putting planning staff, especially code enforcement and building officials, at increasing risk. City leadership cannot prevent community members from making threatening or harassing statements, but leadership can control how the city responds to those statements once they are made. Right now, there is no response, which sends the community the message that this kind of behavior is acceptable and allowed. Council needs to direct the city manager to put in place policies and safety plans that protect all staff members, especially building and planning staff out in the field. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Really appreciate your time and joining us this evening and providing us with your thoughts.
Okay, Mayor, we do have another hand. That is Rich Sheldon. Mr. Sheldon, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. First time using a phone. Hey, so thank you for taking the time to hear me tonight. I am here actually to talk a little bit more about the Bailey Meadows thing, issues that are arising. The issues that we're having as a neighborhood, for one, back to what Ms. O'Neill was saying, there was a meeting the other day. If council likes, a member of the community videotaped that. Happy to get that and provide that as well so you can get a better picture of what was said and what went on. But beyond that, I'd like to go back to what our final order says. And our final order in section, I believe it was 141, states that the tree protection fence needs to be 1 foot per 1 inch in diameter. Currently, that fence is about 20 feet short. The specific thing that I'm talking about is one of my neighbors is having a severe issue with his tree. It's a large tree. Like I said, it's 47 inches in diameter alone, 144 inches in circumference. So it's a big tree. That tree protection fence is about 20 feet too short. And so my question is, why are we not enforcing our own code and our own direction that we provided for the developer? The code clearly says to go to the planning director, which I think is some of the issues that Ms. O'Neill was saying. Gun violence is absolutely uncondonable. And I have not heard anybody threaten Mr. O'Neill with gun violence, but people are angry and they're going to him because that's what the code directs them to do. And his answer is simply that he refuses to do anything. He's not going to do anything, and he provides no answer to why. Again, I have emails. In fact, he sends us to the developer to rectify these situations. The developer is the one making money off of this. And pretty much there are ways to look at mitigating this. But yes, it's going to cost the developer some money to possibly take some trees and do some things. But they're not coming to the table. In fact, they're violating our own code. They're grading as we speak, as this has been put on social media. And we're not acting on behalf of our citizens. And I'd really like to know why that's the case. The profit margin that this would affect the developer is very small, but for our citizens, a $5,000 tree removal is substantial, especially for a small business owner. Elected officials are elected to support us, the city and the citizens, and to do what's best for both, not development. But everything about this seems to be pointing in the opposite of that. And I'd like to really just hear what council's opinions are. Why are we not enforcing our own final order? Why are we not working with our neighbors and our citizens to mitigate the issues and come together and collaborate on this matter and do it so in a lawful manner? We have a variance process. They can go through that process, but they shouldn't be allowed to work until this matter is resolved. Yet again, back to the planning director, his response is, I am not going to discuss this matter anymore. And quite honestly, it makes people angry. And because this is not only is it our pocketbook, but large trees like that, when you start cutting and you start damaging roots, you're starting to talk about safety issues and falling on people's houses, and especially in windstorms like we had the other night. And that would be not a catastrophic event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for coming forward with your thoughts and opinions on these events. Very much appreciated.
Okay, Mayor, the next hand I see is Kathleen Walker. And Ms. Walker, you should be able to unmute yourself now. And please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Kathleen Walker, 15920 Southeast Bluff Road. I just want to reiterate what Rich said. Maybe some of you know, maybe I'm not sure what all you know, but there was a lot of issues about the trees and some of the code protection out there that was supposed to be implemented. And what happened, there was all these calls. They were calling me, they were calling everybody. I kept sending them to, Kelly and all. And so instead, it was kind of decided to avoid all the confusing emails and calls to have a meeting at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. At 7:30 that morning, and the developer was going to be there, they started following the trees. And that was kind of a real, disrespectful thing to do, to really burn the bridges with the community. So that was really unfortunate because it really got everybody upset. And then there was the questions about what's in the final order and why that wasn't implemented. And there was no really rationale given for why the final order wasn't implemented, and the people have real concerns about what other final orders will not be implemented. So it's just a kind of a trust thing that I think it's really important that we as the city, the final order is an agreement between the city, the developers, and the residents. And when those are not going to be followed, it's important to kind of definitely tie in the residents as to why that's not happening, and then how can you mitigate it for them. I think like Rich said, they're willing to be a little flexible. Things get changed sometimes on the ground. We understand that, but it's really important to be respectful to these residents. They're owed that. It's expected, it's expected that we should be able to trust each other. And I think that's, we'll send you the video that was taken, and it was really difficult to listen and hear the way that, how frustrated those neighbors were. So I think it's really something that y'all need to kind of step forward. Are these final orders just suggestions or not? Is there kind of there's this feeling that there's this real push to be developer friendly, and in this case, that's coming at the expense of the residents. So how to kind of resolve these issues in a way that kind of benefits everybody as much as possible. So trying to find some positive solutions. They got up on the wrong foot by cutting those trees at 7:30 for a 9 o'clock meeting. That really did not make things better. So there's some repair that needs to happen. So I'm hoping you all can kind of provide some direction to staff to try to kind of get this resolved. And there's a whole lot more issues that are going to come down the pike as more dirt starts getting moved. Thank you so much for the effort you have and the job ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Looking for additional public comment. Jeff?
Okay, Mayor, I see Brandon Emery, and you should be able to unmute yourself now. And please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can. Hello.
Hi, so my name is Brandon Emery. I'm a Sandy resident, and I live at 37356 Rachel Drive. And I joined the meeting today to express my concerns with some of the actions that have been taken in regards to final order in the Findings Act file number 20-009AP, the Bailey Meadows subdivision, so similar to what we've been talking about. So when you think about, the high winds that we've had over these last 24 hours and the destruction that a falling tree can have for an entire community, you guys can understand how important it is to properly protect these trees, especially near new construction where protection can be provided. So in section 17.102-50B1 in the urban forestry section there, it states that compliance with this chapter is required. And in that section as well, it discusses the 1 foot per 1 inch diameter at breast height, as well as laminated signs on the tree fencing. Currently, there's construction going on. There's not laminated signs, and I have a tree in my backyard that measures 36.5 inches diameter at breast height, and so which means that you should have 36.5 feet before your fencing, where the fencing should be placed. And currently, it's only 18 feet outside of that, off of the tree. And so they're actively grading and moving dirt, and this causes real concern, especially with high winds like we're having. That I'm worried that it could potentially fall in my house. And I just ask that you guys. I reached out to Kelly O'Neill and got back that he has the discretion. I also have the discretion to work with the developer and developer's arborist on placement of the tree protection fencing. So he's saying that he has the discretion to place the tree protection fencing where he wants. That's not true. It has to be 1 foot per every 1 inch. And so I just ask that you guys enforce that final order and don't skirt around that and hold the folks accountable to protecting, you know, our final orders and not allowing that to be those lines to be moved in regards to tree protection fencing. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time tonight. Okay, Jeff.
And Mayor, I do not see any other raised hands.
All right, thank you to all the members of our community who came out to offer public comment tonight. There are opportunities for counselors to respond to public comment at our counselor and committee reports at the conclusion of the meeting. With that, we will move on to resolutions. Resolution 2020-23, the jurisdictional transfer of Highway 211. Jordan.
Good evening, Council. Tonight, for your consideration, Resolution 2023 approves the transfer of Highway 211 that lies within the city's limits, and it would transfer from the Oregon Department of Transportation to the city. And this was an item that had previously come up as a council goal in prior years. We had looked at it as a city a couple of years ago, and then ultimately started renegotiations with ODOT this past year, and presented this agreement to the council at the work session on August 3rd. What does a jurisdiction transfer mean? Essentially, it means what it sounds like, the jurisdiction of, you know, maintaining the roadway, installing improvements, you know, planning any capital projects would go from, and funding those would go from the state, ODOT, to the city of Sandy. We've seen a lot of residential growth as the public comment spoke to in that area over the last several years, decades. This is a very important roadway for the city of Sandy, and cities have started to look more seriously, especially as ODOT has actually taken the approach of transferring more of the state highways to the overlapping jurisdictions, because we're in a better position to plan for capital improvements, to incorporate those improvements into our transportation system plans, and do more of the amenities that are important to us, looking at sidewalks, street lighting, pedestrian safety improvements, you know, looking at the important crossing Tickle Creek. We know that, you know, those projects probably will not be a priority for ODOT, but they're a priority for us. And so taking this jurisdiction allows us to incorporate this roadway now into our capital improvement plan for our transportation network. And also, you know, it helps us manage those projects under our own rules and regulations, as opposed to the state rules around highway. And so, you know, and obviously being the governing jurisdiction, we get to manage that project and any project that occurs along the highway. So for, in consideration of this jurisdiction transfer, the state will provide funding of $500,000 that could be used for maintenance, and also the ADA improvements that need to be completed by 2027 along that stretch. And there's a map, I believe that's is part of the packet that shows where those locations are. And also, in addition to the city taking over this portion of the road, ODOT has committed to improving the traffic signal systems along Highway 26 at the intersections of Bluff Road, Strauss Avenue, Shelley Ave, Mining Avenue, and then at the Tenike Wolf Road. This was something that actually the mayor and the rest of the council too had expressed interest in this, but the mayor did a good job in negotiating, adding this as part of this jurisdiction transfer. And they committed to doing those traffic signal upgrades upon execution of the agreement. I don't have a definitive date of when that project would actually start. It was something that couldn't be put in an agreement until we had the agreement actually inked. But that takes about 3 months from the time that the council authorizes the transfer for the transfer to be authorized and executed by ODOT. So I need to get clarification from ODOT that once the city executes it, does that mean they will do the traffic signal upgrades, or do we need to wait until they actually sign and execute before that project gets started? But my hope is that, you know, given that's a pretty simple project, you know, for ODOT standards, comparing that to say the Vista Loop 10 Ike sidewalk, that those signal upgrades hopefully can go in pretty quick, following the council's approval. Quick meaning 3 to 4 months. But I can get, once the council approves this tonight, I can get more information about when we might expect to see those signals be improved. So I'm happy to entertain any questions and answer what I can. There's a letter by the ODOT regional manager about those traffic signals in the packet, and also the agreement itself is the same agreement that was presented at the work session. And then we did add the resolution as a way to formally adopt this transfer by the city council and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. So staff recommends that the council approves the resolution 2023 and approve the transfer of Highway 211 that lies within the city's limits. Thank you.
At this point, we'd need to do a darn ribbon cutting for those traffic signals.
Seriously.
Councilor Smallman.
Well, I'm just ready to make a motion unless anybody wants to discuss it. I feel like we've had this on the table for a while, so.
A couple comments from Councilor Exner, maybe real quick, and then we'll go to you.
Absolutely.
I'll cut it in half. The part that interests me is if we do take over this piece of road, we can adjust the speed on this piece of road. That's correct, right, Jordan?
To a certain point, there's still a process. You know, the state governs the speed, and I think there was a couple bills, or at least a bill, that was looking to change that, and I can double check and get back to you on that. But it's not as simple as, you know, this question came up before. It's not as simple as the cities having the authority to just change roadway speed limits to whatever we want. There is an engineering study, a traffic speed study that goes into it. And I think there's the potential of extending what the 45-mile-an-hour limit is currently. But beyond that, I think the data is just not, until we do more street calming improvements, you're probably not going to get the speeds there that is going to be able to justify getting it lower than what it is.
Okay. Because it seems to me that authority means that we take over responsibility and authority for that road. I noticed that in the agreement, there's lots about the needing to keep it as a haul route and weight determinations on the pavement, et cetera, et cetera. But it just seems to me that we ought to be able to adjust the speed, and that has some repercussions later on in some of the evening's conversation, as well as or some of the comments that are coming from some of the public about reducing that speed. So I will leave it at that. I won't even talk about the signalization.
All right. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Smallwood.
No other discussion? All right. I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2023, transfer of Highway 211.
For 14 years, I'll second that.
All right. This is a big step here, you guys. So I have a motion from Counselor Smallwood, a second from Counselor Peetzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed? Thumbs down or a nay? Unanimous. Motion carries. Wow. We took a big control over the future of our community, you guys. Good work. Good work, everyone. Thank you. All right. Moving on with our agenda. I was doing a little bit of homework here. 1 second. Sorry. All right. Moving on to new business, the IGA for our transportation systems plan, TSP update. I'm guessing Kelly O'Neill and Jordan.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce it. So this is a project, another council goal that has been in the works. And a bump in the road is, no pun intended, given us a TSP, but with the COVID, situation, this took a little bit longer than what we would like in getting this started. So a lot of negotiations happen with these projects. This is the IGA that authorizes basically the state to move forward with the TGM grant, for the city to accept the TGM grant to update our transportation system plan, which is a major plan for our street and transportation network that we've been looking to update for about, I think it's been about a decade since our last TSP was adopted. And given the city's growth and the population growth and our transportation needs and things like incorporating Highway 211 now into that TSP, it's very timely that we are now positioned to update this TSP. So over the last several months, I think years at this point, since we were awarded this TGM grant, ODOT has been negotiating the scope of work with the chosen consultant. A lot of, what happens is that because of the TGM grant, ODOT essentially manages these projects and negotiates the scope with the input from the city. And so there's a lot of back and forth, and then COVID put some things on the back burner for ODOT. But here we are with the final scope of work, with the final TGM agreement for the IGA with ODOT to update our TSP. And so we are recommending the city council authorizes the city manager to execute the IGA, and so we can get started finally on our transportation system plan update. It's about, I think we have a matching of like $25,000, but the grant total is over 161,000. So, these plan updates take a lot of work. We included some highlights of what some of that work would be in the staff report, but if you're interested, you can go into more detail within the IGA of what those deliverables are in terms of the public outreach, committees that need to be formed, all the different analysis that happens in terms of traffic needs and capital planning and financing and things like that. So it's a substantial amount of work that I believe it's going to take about a year to complete, with plenty of milestones along the way, city council workshops, like I said, citizen advisory committees, and other public engagement. So this is sort of the first big milestone is finally getting this IGA executed and the TSP off and running. Any questions?
No, I think we might have lost the mayor.
All right.
So any other questions out there? Hearing none. Thank you, Jordan. Oh, hey, the mayor is coming back. So let's hurry up and vote.
We haven't done it yet. Have we kicked off this TSP finally or not?
Well, that being said, I will recommend that we authorize the city manager to enter into the intergovernmental agreement.
I'll second.
It appears we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'm very excited about that. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give it a thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay, or a thumbs down. Motion carries. Congratulations, everybody. Moving on to our report from the city manager, Jordan.
Hey, all right, a few things. Hey, welcome back. Thank you for the summer break. Hopefully everyone had a chance to get out and do something before the smoke arrived. But speaking of smoke and fire, I know you were talking about it earlier. Thank you for your service, Lori, and helping the situation that Oregon's in right now. But something that Mike Walker and Ryan Wood have done in the past, and they brought up this idea again, is offering a chance for citizens and residents to drop off down limbs and storm debris, woody storm debris at the Public Works field, the operations center, this Saturday. So between 9 and 3, the chipper will be there, and Public Works will have some staff there to help residents get rid of down limbs and things like that from the storm. So now that the wind is dying down, I'm sure people are starting to rake and find out that, looking around, there's a lot of limbs and stuff out there. So Speaking of public works, another thing that and related to our wastewater system, we received notice last week that we did receive the Sustainability Award from the Pacific Northwest Clean Water Association for our wastewater recycling program, where we send our treated wastewater to a potted plant nursery. And so I know that program has been in place for many years, but it's nice to finally get recognized for that. So congratulations on that award. An item from our planning department, again, I think a pretty innovative idea that's kind of come up through questions that the planning department has received. And some other cities have done a similar model to this, but we've seen success with the temporary outdoor dining expansions that basically the planning department said, hey, go ahead and do that. We recognize that, with the coronavirus, that people, creating more space outside, and with the regulations around how many tables and spacing and stuff like that, we've seen success, with restaurants doing that. But now we're heading into the fall and winter, and there's concern about, people wanting to sit outside, especially with the rains and things like that. So we're looking at doing a program of allowing temporary tent structures to cover those outdoor dining spaces. And this would be a simple agreement that we would have with those businesses that would last until, essentially we're in phase 3 when things, go back to more normal. I think it's a sound idea. I think the city of Bend is doing something similar, and a couple other cities will probably start doing this as well, given that we still find ourselves in phase 1, phase 2, but restaurants are going to need more capacity. I think allowing these temporary structures, given that this will be temporary, we'll get through this, but this will help those businesses. I wanted to bring this up, kind of get your blessing to kind of move forward with that, since there's not really any, I think it's a little squishy in terms of our code, in terms of what we allow temporary structures and tents, but given that this is temporary and we would have agreement from the businesses to take these down once the emergency is over, I think it's a good thing to do.
I think do it.
Do it.
Yeah, I like it.
I see lots of people using all kinds of the outdoor stuff, and I'm across the street from La Happy, and they have a big tent out back, and it's always got somebody in it.
Mm-hmm. Great. We'll keep going with that. Thank you. And then a last item, on a couple months ago, Jeff circulated a code of conduct for our boards and commissions document, and this is basically the work that we've been doing to kind of clean up administratively our boards and commissions. You've seen the terms and the term limits documents. We've been doing the bylaws, and looking at our policies and procedures for our boards and commissions. So this was something that's come up that was another gap that we have, that other cities have some good models. And I think we looked at the city of Tigard for their code of conducts for all their volunteer boards and commissions as a starting place. And so that was circulated a couple months ago. I just wanted to check in on that. I know that we had a couple comments from counselors on that, but we were going to look at scheduling, a work session or a time to bring that back for adoption as a policy from the city council. And I just wanted to check in with the council on that, if there was any last comments on it, or if we're ready to kind of bring that forward.
Councilor Smollett.
Yeah, so Jeff, and Jordan, thank you guys for your work. I know I spoke with Jeff on Friday about it. Council, many of you may not know, for me, I really wanted an ethics section put in this code of conduct, and it doesn't need to be listed as an ethics, but there were some things that I wanted addressed. Specifically, that if you're on a city commission or a board that reports to the city, that you're held to a certain standard of reporting factual information to the public and not presenting a skew of the truth or a flat out misrepresentation of the truth to the public, and getting people upset and causing issues. I think that you need to be at a higher standard, and I think we all agree with that. So, and Jeff has worked very hard to do some great wording on that code of conduct, and I look forward to that work session on that.
Thank you, Counselor. And I agree. You know, I think we've had several instances with several of our different committees pop up over the last year and a half, where we want to move forward with putting together a code of conduct and kind of some rules and guidelines, especially you know, on some of the public comment that went on earlier tonight. You know, I think a couple of us still need to get a better handle on all the events and circumstances that kind of surround some of the circumstances. But to have members that you do represent, when you're on a committee or a commission or council, you represent our community, you represent our city. And we don't all have to agree. The members on this council certainly do not agree on every issue all of the time. But we certainly treat each other with decorum and respect and as a fellow neighbor. And we certainly expect that out of our fellow commissioners and committee members and our fellow counselors. And so I'm glad that we're moving forward with this. But I also, you know, I think there are a couple of committee members and stuff that we need to take a hard look at when those positions are renewing and possibly before that, especially if, you know, we had 2 Parks Committee members at that event that we had Miss O'Neill testify about earlier today. And, you know, I've only heard one perspective from that, but you know, some of the actions I heard were definitely unbecoming of what we would expect out of representatives of our community. That's for sure. And like I said, there's some members on multiple committees that I think that we're ready to have some revisions on. So, yeah. So we're forward to have that go forward and see it at a future work session, I think, Jordan.
Great, thank you.
Agree.
Right. Well, that's it. Thank you to Tyler last week for filling in on, which I know was a very interesting week. So like the mayor said, we're catching up on some of the events of last week. But my appreciation to Tyler for serving as acting during that week. Thanks.
Thank you, Tyler. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler.
Not a problem. Happy to help.
With that, we'll move on to committee and councilor reports. Councilor Schultz.
Thanks. I had the opportunity, I think last week, to participate in a telephone town hall with Anna Williams and her constituents. Got to share about what the city of Sandy has been doing in relation to our childcare projects. Kind of answered some questions about, you know, our new parking codes, and then I had David Snyder join to explain the grant addition to our tenant improvement program, and just kind of boast a bit about all the stuff we've done since we made childcare a council goal. So it was nice and received really well, and it continues to be a top priority for Representative Williams as she moves forward. So we hope to see more good stuff coming out in regards to childcare. And then my other thing on my list is kind of a question, I guess, for Jordan. Is I heard about what happened last week as well, and I am curious, do we have any sort of plans in place for when our employees are threatened by members of our community? Is that something we need to do? Is it something we already have? Are we not acting on what we have?
Yeah, I mean, so we're working on this internally, but I mean, if there's a credible threat, obviously, you know, the answer is that we have a police department we call to address, you know, issues that if there's a threat of harm to, you know, life and, you know, property. But then in terms of, you know, the questions about conduct and how we handle, you know, customers and things like that, you know, it's something that we're working on, and we'll work with the department and individual about, you know, these situations. But I don't want to, you know, have to go into it further, but, you know, there isn't any kind of council policy, you know, about you know, what the expectations for customers or citizens are. I'd say from our, you know, our personnel policies, the top, our document is governed by the fact that we treat everyone with respect and dignity. And I would say that our, you know, our philosophy should be that we would expect that same treatment, but understanding that in some situations that, you know, we definitely will have people that are upset or angry customers, and it's just kind of the nature of the business that we're in. But if there is, you know, absolutely threats being made, then, you know, there's proper channels for going through to follow up on those threats, and you know, bringing the authorities into play on that. But this is something that we're going to work on this week, and I can report back to you, Counselor.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's, I know we can't control what other people say, but we can control not having employees go into unsafe situations. So kind of keep an eye on that situation, and maybe we need to use the buddy system or something. I'm not sure what all occurred and what's going on, but I don't like that we're having threats against employees and then continually having them go back into the same situation. So.
Understood.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, Jordan, just since we're on this topic, Bethany, I don't want to take any of your—
No, you're good.
Steal your thunder or anything, but since you brought it up, because I had a question as well, I made a note. Regarding people recording a conversation, and I recognize that, you know, in a public meeting, you know, we know that we're being recorded and whatnot, but in a private meeting held between individuals, what, and maybe this was more of a question for David, I don't know, but you know, what is the guidance there with somebody recording a conversation without all the parties being aware that that is being recorded?
Yeah, that is a good question for David. To just clarify, I know Oregon is you know, you need consent for video, but then there's also, if it's a public meeting, sure, right? So
it sounds like this was kind of a private meeting, though. I mean, not really, because, you know, you have to advertise a public meeting. So, but if it's just you're meeting in a group, that's more of a private meeting. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but
yeah. It's a good question. We need to figure out where that line is. What is the definition where, you know, it's okay to tape or record? If you're
yourself.
Right. I mean, this meeting, what is a public meeting? Like, what meets the definition of a public meeting?
Right.
You know, pertains to videotaping and things like that. Yeah.
Perfect.
On that, I do think, especially in this environment where people are a little bit more on edge than normal, you know, when this has been a controversial issue for some time now, and perhaps we do need to, you know, identify what those situations are, and take, you know, more precautions, especially when sending staff into the field and stuff into those situations. My understanding is I think, Jordan, you and I had a conversation a while back that shortly after some of the shootings and stuff that were even happening during council meetings, not obviously in Sandy, but I mean across the country, there was a talk about looking at some of our city hall security and stuff for staff and everybody. Is that something that's still ongoing and being looked at?
It is. Honestly, we can move faster on that. I think it was something that we're working on with the facilities plan, and then, you know, the COVID shutdown hit, and so City Hall has been secured for the last 6 months. But, you know, the technology improvements that we really need to make there, I think you heard that in the facilities plan presentation about the entrances to City Hall. You know, you have 3 different ones. One is downstairs where we have no oversight over. So that is a concern for, I think, all of us. So we're looking at a secured access system. I think it's a worthy investment to make sure that, you know, we're having some kind of controlled access, more oversight on who's coming in and out of buildings, making sure employees are safe and feel safe when they go out to their cars. Because, you know, the dark winters, there's often, you know, there's situations that, you know, make it not as, you know, at least the perception of it being safe. So lighting, you know, more cameras and things like that. So yeah, that is a topic we need to revisit and maybe do that now that, you know, we have the opportunity with the closure.
Great. Okay. Councilor Schultz, do you have more this evening?
That was the last thing on my list.
Thank you. Counselor Exner.
Yeah, on that same sort of general subject matter, I think it is important that we all support each other on the city side and on the city employee and staff and council side, as well as the citizen side. I think these things that put us in such a stressful situation now with the coronavirus. I know people are more stressed. The protests on all sides have brought us to a little bit more of an anger side of things. And I know that seems like tempers flare much quicker than they used to. And I think that if we just would think about a little bit more, if you're planning a meeting that you know that might be more temperamental than maybe some might be, then maybe invite some more folks to help you out. I know that I would certainly be more than happy to represent or be part of that meeting and try to mellow things out. And maybe there's some other people in situations where we could make that a little easier. On the same sort of venue, I move a little bit differently. I had a chance to meet with the chief of police here about a week ago, and we kind of talked about some of these things, not just so much between employees and people, but where our police are, our officers are. Now they're working overtime on these protests, and they're working evenings. They're getting some really bad calls on about what they're some derogatory comments about them, and I really think that we have to recognize that our officers are getting kind of tired, and maybe we should give everybody kind of a little bit of a rest. I don't know how that might work. The chief and I did not come up with any solutions, but I just want to verbally say here that I really appreciate all of the work that our police officers are doing. They really are trying very hard to keep things calm. You know, we are not Portland. I got to say that again and again. I'm going to be able to find a way to make this comment in other places that I find myself in. Is we are trying to make this a safe environment. City of Sandy is a great place to live. It's a fun place. It's a safe place, and we want to keep it that way. And if there's some individuals that want to come in and make this an unsafe place, you're not wanted. But our police officers are trying really hard. And I think as council, we also want to just, at least from my viewpoint, want to make sure that we state that this is a safe place to be. Express your opinions, say the things that you need to say, but be part of a respectful society that we hope that everybody feels safe to be in. Our officers, protesters, employees, all the rest. So kind of calm down this a little bit and make your point if you want, but do it in a respectful way. So get that off my just a little bit there. We have a meeting coming up on the 16th for Art Commission. I'm sure that there will be several parts of that meeting to discuss what we talked about earlier on in council here. So that's about all I really had. Oh, I do have one other thing, and I know I've hit Jordan about it a little bit, but I wanted to say, I think the intersection of Wolf and Ten Eyck and Highway 26, I'm really glad to see the TSP being brought up as a thing to work on. But I got to say, there are some pieces of that intersection that just bug the daylights out of me. And I've been that way for quite a while. There's some rough changes from 26, the flat part, to the deeper piece into the what I call the post office hill. Just, I think we need to take a look at some of these rough areas that have so much traffic that people are concerned about. I know coming out of that, there are so many things that are happening on Highway 26. So it seems like the increased traffic, the truck traffic, the increase from the coronavirus used to be kind of slow, but now it has become pretty busy. So we need to look at some of these intersections a little bit stronger and make sure that we don't end up making them more dangerous than they already are. But certainly that 26 and Wolf and Ten Eyck intersection needs to be looked at. We need to look at some of which is responsibility by ODOT, which is our responsibility, especially now that looks like we're starting to see some construction happen with the county offices where the old Wild Harvest used to be, and that's probably going to create some more traffic situations there. So with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jan Lee.
Yes, I'll start out with something positive. Emily and I have been meeting with the cohort on the climate project, on the resilience project. So we are meeting monthly now with 5 other cities and sharing ideas and thoughts as they move through their plans. The other thing I'd really like to say is I hope that we're going to take seriously what Nicole said. I understood that Officer Moody, for example, was mistreated by a couple of our advisory board members, and I'd like to know more about that when we have that discussion. I think it's really disrespectful when we're treating other employees of the city poorly.
Yep.
With that, I will stop.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Hamlin, if he's with us.
Good. Thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I'm out in the truck now because I can't see anything in my room, and my battery was down to 28%. So I'm gonna make it through the night, though, guys. Don't worry. I won't do a lot of repeating what others said, but I think some very good points made tonight. This has been a very insightful council report as well too. So I won't delay, but I just want to echo what Jan has said as well too. I think when we've got these conflicts, we definitely do need to be aware of what's going on and what the resolutions are in place and what our role is in taking any action if needed as well too. So with that, I just want to say huge shout out to all city staff, the fire department, the sheriff's office. I have seen so much activity around our town, and also just the citizens of this city have just been helping each other out, and it's just been awesome to see all the neighbors supporting each other. And it's probably a good escape from sitting in Zoom meetings all day long for everybody else. So it's good to see people helping each other. Amazing work for the city. I saw multiple police, fire, sheriff's cars in my neighborhood today as we were cleaning up a big branch that went down in our backyard and took out my 7-year-old blueberry plant. So a little bummed on that, but definitely was appreciative of all the support. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it. Councillor Smallwood.
I think for everybody, it's kind of a nice break for all the negativity that's going around too. So, so I met with Kelly Cena yesterday. She is doing some student and youth outreach and advocacy for the ant farm. And I think, Jeff, if it's okay with you, I'm going to put Nupa in touch with you. I think he'd like to come and talk to council about some of the stuff that they're doing and some of the programs that they're going to be offering here in East Clackamas County and in Sandy and Estacada. And they also have some grant money that's available. And I'll ask him to talk about that specifically, but for people who've been affected by COVID, whether it's financially, because your kids aren't in school and just it runs the gamut for all sorts of things. So definitely want to utilize that opportunity while that's there for people in our community. Let's see. Got a parks meeting tomorrow night. I think they're moving forward with the Johnsrud project as far as we should be getting some binoculars and whatnot out there. Although I can tell you that power poles were blown over right at Johnsrud last night. In fact, Bluff Road out here is still blocked off. So I don't know how much damage was actually done at the viewpoint. We had down power lines and whatnot. So that's about it. Other than everybody stay safe, look out for your neighbors, make sure you're keeping track of people who can't keep track of themselves very good or might need some help if things get real in Sandy. So with that, everybody take care.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it. A couple things in my report tonight. First is oh my God, sorry, Councillor Peetzold. Apologize. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm pretty new to the group. I'm sure you just forgot.
yeah.
Still managed to get it in, Jeremy. You still managed to get it in.
Oh, you didn't hear my other one? I got it in earlier. Just for you, Lori and John. Yeah, a couple of things. OBAC has a survey out with the League of Oregon Cities for broadband in our communities and our cities. And I've been working with the League of Oregon Cities on creating that and have that all there. I'm told Sandy has not responded to that. So as being the vice chair of that committee, I need Sandy to respond to that, especially since we have our own municipal ISP. That being said, I'm sure glad I fought very hard to get all of our fiber underground in our city as of last night, as I've been dealing with only 2 hours of sleep or so, 3 hours of sleep because of the whole county being power down and fiber lines down and everything down as out there. So, that's amazing what you do. My kids would rather have the internet versus power, but they see the connection. The down lamps. I am so excited, Mike, that you're bringing back that program from a few years ago that we had when we had a big windstorm. It helped out immensely. I used it. I'm grateful I don't need to use it this time around. But as I went on my morning run around, there are a lot of people out there. Also, I think there's some just space that aren't designated to a particular landowner per se in the road. I'm thinking DeBarco down here across from the apartments. There's trees, branches, and maybe the city had cut it up, lining the side of the roads and that type of thing. So I'm hoping that I'm sure you guys are working way overtime on getting that cleaned up, but that might be part of that program as well, or they're proactively able to pick those things up over the course of the next week or so. But I've been impressed by how much had been cleared off of the roads by the time I went. I had to go out for an emergency, computer emergency, internet emergency in the middle of the night, and I was impressed about how much had been cleaned up from 10 o'clock till 3 o'clock a.m. It might have just blown away, is what I thought, but the crews were out there working, not just here, but across Clackamas County. So I appreciate all the hard work. And I just want to do a great shout out. I watched one of the best planning videos I think I've ever seen. And I know I've sent back an email. You guys all got an email, and I apologize. I cannot think of our new planner's name. She's so new.
Shelly Dennison.
Gordon? What's that?
Shelly Dennison.
Yes, Shelly. Thank you. And I apologize for not remembering that. But what a great video. And I mean, I'll announce that I saw that video. I think that video was amazing. And I mean, don't let her go. I mean, this thing is what I think our public needs. She had a way, persona, the way she presented it. I know it's a team effort, and kind of answering a lot of the questions for, people that maybe aren't as weathered as Carl or myself or other people on the council here or on planning commission, to understand just kind of the process without getting into, the nitty gritty. And so I really appreciate that. And I sure hope and look forward to futures of those on pretty much all the future projects like this, because I think that will help out immensely. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Counselor. And again, I apologize for skipping over you tonight. Just a couple quick things. First is an exciting night tonight of things that our council and our staff have accomplished. What a wastewater update. A huge initiative that our council has been putting forward towards a wetland project that would be nearly half the cost of, doing it another way, and so much better for the environment and allowing educational and recreational opportunities for our residents. So huge step there, as well as moving forward with the acquiring 211 and the control over the future of our community that gives us. And it's sad when so much positive's going on, honestly, that so much gets distorted. And one thing I did want to bring up tonight was some commentary that has been going on in the local media recently on our council policies pertaining to growth. There was a conversation by one of the candidates, Kathleen Walker, who's recently talked about how we got rid of growth paying for itself, and we've become very development friendly here in Sandy. And that simply is just not the truth. It's a complete distortion of the facts. When you go back and you look at the video and actually watch the commentary as to what happened, that not just that night, but all the conversation leading in, is that this council's focus has been on commercial activity growth, business growth in our community, to go and find jobs, family wage jobs for our community members so they don't have to commute so far from their families for work every day, so that we can, again, start taking more control over the future of our community. Imagine a day in which our residents wake up, all of our neighbors, and they see a Walmart coming to town. That is what a Kathleen Walker position does. Sit on your hands and do nothing and watch corporate America take over your town without you doing anything about it. And what this Sandy City Council wants to do is to move forward in finding opportunities for our residents and for our neighbors, and to find ways that we can attract business to this community that we all want, that will be a huge benefit to our residents. And so that's what we're focused on. We are not about building more homes. The truth is that when you look at the residential development and some of the controversies that's happened over the last year and a half, that has been previous councils that have been that annexed in property that was sold for development purposes. And by the time it made it over to leaders on this council, very little could be done with the current laws, rules, and regulations that oversee land use here in this community. And in reaction to that, we took more control over our annexation process and have put in more guidelines and rules where developers have to show that there's proper public infrastructure in place before you can annex in. So been a very proactive council. Very much appreciate Councillor Jan Lee standing up for our council in what we have done. And I think we all have a lot to be proud of. And I think that we do need, all of us. I need to get more vocal, but so do all of you as councilors need to get more vocal out there and standing up for the positions that our council has taken. Because if we don't, we're going to allow other people to do it for us. And those people have proven themselves not to be honest. And so that's just, that's the truth. That's the facts. Additionally, in the news recently, Sandy was profiled in the New York Times over the weekend. I got an opportunity to meet with a reporter along with some business owners and different community residents. So take a chance to look at that. But I do think it does give some good insight into some of what's going on in the psyche of our community during these times that we find ourselves in. Wildfires, thank you again to all of our first responders, police and fire, and all of our neighbors who are pitching in. I had an opportunity to be on a call with the governor and her staff earlier today. It's looking like a rough 48 hours. It's looking like a lot of work over the next couple of days. The weather's gonna do us a little bit of some favors here, I think, over the next couple of days that will assist us after about 48 hours. But you know, with the world getting so small with social media, I think all of us feel a connection. We have a family, a friend, a relative that's been connected with this. So definitely have your thoughts and prayers with your other Oregonians tonight. Be thinking about ways in which you can pitch in. And then Councillor Smallwood, to pick up a copy of the Hoodview News. If you see it in the stand, she's on the cover and covered in it. And what a great article about the service that Councillor Smallwood does for our local community out here in a variety of different ways. She's an incredibly special person, and we're lucky to have her. So thank you, Councillor Smallwood. Very much appreciate it.
Oh, and thanks for your kind words.
Absolutely.
So,
of course.
It's my pleasure.
So with that, that is the end of my council report for this evening. Thank you, everybody, and remember to stick around for our executive session that we will be having afterwards.
Could I just get one point of clarification, Mayor?
Yes.
In reading through all of the reports following retreat about what growth meant and how we interpreted it, everything that I read indicated that all of us were unanimous that that growth policy was just about business, had nothing to do with housing. So do the rest of the councilors feel that that was the case?
Yes, I do.
That has always been something we've been focused on, and I'm very proud to say that that was one of the things I voted for.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and on that, you know, it's funny. I had an email about a year ago exchanged with Kelly O'Neill, our planning director, just talking about growth and saying, you know, our focus as a council is on business, is on finding proper commercial business activity that can happen here in our community. Nothing to do with residential growth. Absolutely not. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll adjourn tonight's meeting.